In our headlines on this Friday, December 12th, here in South Korea, progress briefings by government entities under the Lee Jae-myung administration continue. The second day, and today the Science Ministry shares its report on operations thus far. South Korea's import price index soars 2.6% on month in November on the back of a weaker Korean won, which is also raising some concern over inflation, even as the local economy remains on a recovery path. Meanwhile, the search for two missing workers following a collapse at a construction site in the southern city of Gwangju on Thursday afternoon is halted owing to safety concerns. We start with the second day of progress briefings by government entities, and today, that is Friday, the Science Ministry took to the podium. And President Lee Jae-myung also took this opportunity to highlight the importance of investments in the field of science and technology for future prosperity. Correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
역사적으로도 그러하지만 이 과학기술을 존중하는 사회 또는 국가, 과학기술에 투자하는 국가는 흔했습니다.
That was the assessment by President Lee Jae-myung as he was briefed by his science minister on key tasks as part of government ministry's back-to-back policy briefings for 2026. Noting the U.S. and China as an example, President Lee called for the need to invest more in science and technology, vowing to undo the budget cut for the R&D sector by the previous administration.
우리가 한때 대한민국의 성장 발전의 토대가 공부, 학습에 있다는 또는 직설적으로 얘기하면 연구개발 투자에 있다는 사실을 잠깐 망각한 때가 있었죠. 상당히 큰 타격이 있었습니다.
In 2026, a record high of 35 trillion won, worth over 24 billion US dollars, will be allocated for R&D. He also called for the need to create an environment where scientists and researchers are not afraid of trial and error, pointing out a government evaluation system that solely focuses on the success of research projects.
연구 실패하는 게 너무 당연한 거잖아요, 원래는. 장기 과제나 아니면 공공 영역의 R&D는 성공을 많이 하는 게 이상한 거예요. 그래, 우리는 실패했다고 비난하고 성공하면 과제 더 주고 그러잖아요.
For that, he stressed the role of public officials.
여기 계신 공직자 여러분들의 마음의 자세와 태도가 정말로 중요합니다. 그 사회가 흥하냐 망하냐는 결국은 그 사회의 권한을 가진 사람들, 자원 배분의 권한을 가진 사람들에 달려 있는 것 같아요.
Friday's policy briefings in the administrative city of Sejong were also televised live in full. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
And the president has called for tougher financial penalties against companies that fail to protect customer data. Now, the call comes in light of the massive leak of personal information from e-commerce giant Coupang. Speaking during a policy briefing by the Personal Information Protection Commission on this Friday, the president said sanctions should be punitive enough to fuel fear of business closure. Under current regulations, companies can be fined up to 3% of their total revenue for data breaches that are calculated based on the average revenue over the past 3 years. Accordingly, President Lee suggested imposing penalties based on the highest revenue during that period rather than the 3-year average. In response, the Personal Information Protection Commission said it was considering raising fines up to 10% of revenue in cases of repeated serious violations. And President Lee Jae-myung has accepted the resignation of Oceans and Fisheries Minister Chun Chae-soo. Now, this is according to the presidential office in a notice to its press poll on Thursday afternoon. Chun had earlier shared his intentions to step down over bribery allegations involving the Unification Church. While he has strongly denied the accusations, Chun said he was resigning to avoid hindering the administration's work. Chun is the first minister to resign under the Lee Jae-myung administration. The Finance Ministry has reaffirmed its assessment that the Korean economy is on a recovery path, but adds that inflation remains a viable concern. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young reports.
The South Korean economy is continuing on a gradual recovery path. In its latest Green Book, the Ministry of Economy and Finance said domestic consumption is improving and semiconductor-led exports continue to show strength, helping the economy move out of the sluggishness seen in the first half of the year. But the ministry also pointed to volatility in monthly indicators due to long holiday periods and base effects, as well as ongoing employment challenges in vulnerable sectors. Industrial output in October fell 2.5% from a month earlier, the biggest drop in nearly 6 years, largely due to a sharp fall in semiconductor production, while service sector output also dipped slightly. Still, consumption showed resilience. Retail sales rose 3.5%, supported by stronger demand for semi-durable and non-durable goods as consumer sentiment climbed to its highest level in 8 years. Additionally, the number of Chinese visitors to Korea jumped nearly 27% from a year ago. Inflation, however, remains a concern. Consumer prices rose 2.4% in November, driven by higher agriculture and petroleum prices and the impact of a stronger U.S. dollar.
Rising prices for agricultural products and petroleum are adding pressure to household living costs. And with the weaker won also putting upward pressure on inflation, we plan to strengthen our policy response.
The ministry also warned that global uncertainties remain elevated, with major economies imposing new tariffs and trade tensions weighing on growth. To support momentum, the government plans to accelerate next year's budget execution from early 2026 and step up efforts to further boost domestic demand. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, preliminary findings by the central bank show the weaker Korean won has driven up import prices at a pace unseen since April 2024. Our Lee Seung-jae has details.
Import prices in South Korea rose at their fastest pace in 19 months in November, even as global oil prices declined. New data from the Bank of Korea on Friday shows that the weaker Korean won played the central role in driving costs higher. According to the preliminary figures, the import price index climbed 2.6% on month in November. That is an acceleration from the 1.9% increase recorded in October, and marks the fastest monthly gain since April 2024, when the index jumped 3.8%. It's also the fifth straight month of rising import prices. On a year-on-year basis, the index increased 2.2%. The report points to a significant depreciation of the Korean won. The currency averaged 1,457.77 won per dollar in November, compared with 1,423.36 won in October. That weaker exchange rate raised the cost of bringing goods into the country, even though oil prices moved in the opposite direction. Dubai crude, which is South Korea's key benchmark, edged down 0.8% to $64.47 a barrel. Economists note that import prices are a critical part of the broader inflation picture. Higher import costs flow directly into production expenses and can eventually push up consumer prices across the supply chain. That dynamic is likely to influence the central bank's outlook as it monitors inflation and currency stability heading into the new year. The data also highlights movement on the export side of the economy. The export price index rose for a fifth consecutive month in November, up 3.7% from October. Although the pace slowed from the 4.1% increase seen in the previous month, the continued upward trend suggests that Korean exporters are feeling the effects of both currency shifts and recovering global demand. Analysts say the combination of rising import and export prices underscores the challenges and opportunities facing the Korean economy at a time of volatile currency markets and global uncertainty. The BOK is expected to watch these indicators closely as it shapes policy in the months ahead. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Also on the trade front, Mexico is imposing import tariffs of up to 50% on goods from South Korea, China, and other Asian nations that analysts believe are aimed at easing pressure from the Trump administration. Our Ian Jin explains.
The Senate of Mexico approved new tariff hikes on Wednesday, under which Mexico plans to impose up to 50% tariffs on 1,463 products from Asian countries that are not under a free trade agreement. This includes countries like Thailand, India, and Indonesia, but also China and South Korea. Set to take effect on January 1st, the new measures are being implemented on the back of President Claudia Sheinbaum's call for the country needing stronger tools to boost domestic production. South Korea's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources held an emergency meeting with Korean automobile, auto parts and steel companies on Thursday, a day after the tariff hikes were approved. During the meeting, the ministry assessed that Mexico's tariff hike measures will likely only have a limited impact on South Korean exports due to Mexico's exemption on tariffs on imports of raw materials for export production. Most of Korea's exports to Mexico consist of components and raw materials processed by Korean companies to produce goods that are then exported to the United States. Despite such arrangements, official negotiations of a free trade agreement between South Korea and Mexico have remained stalled since talks began back in 2006. In 2000, the two countries signed an investment guarantee agreement, but this framework does not provide tariff exemptions. Addressing this, the South Korean Trade Ministry is set to convene a meeting soon to analyze the impact of the latest tariff hikes and to discuss possible countermeasures with business leaders. For Japan, as it has a free trade agreement with Mexico, this means it stands to gain a price advantage over Korea once the tariff hikes take effect. But China has warned that Mexico's new tariff measures would substantially undermine the interests of trade. China's Ministry of Commerce said that it hopes Mexico will correct such unilateralist and protectionist practices as soon as possible. Meanwhile, this comes as the United States continues to push countries in Latin America to limit their economic ties with China. Lee Eun-jin, Arirang News.
In other news, the first meeting of the Nuclear Consultative Group under the new South Korean and U.S. administrations took place on Thursday. This advisory group was set up by the former administrations of the two countries, and Thursday's gathering saw the Trump administration reaffirming its commitment to extended deterrence for South Korea. Our Cha Yun-kyung reports.
The fifth meeting of the Nuclear Consultative Group, the South Korean-U.S. Standing Consultative Body on Nuclear Deterrence, was held on Thursday local time in Washington, D.C. Seoul's Ministry of National Defense said the meeting marked the first NCG session since South Korean President Lee Jae-myung and U.S. President Donald Trump took office. The meeting was attended by Kim Hong-chul, Deputy Minister for National Defense Policy, and Robert Sufer, Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear Deterrence, Chemical and Biological Policies. After the meeting, the two sides released a joint statement. Deputy Minister Kim asserted that South Korea will continue to lead in maintaining and strengthening its conventional defense capabilities. Sufer reiterated Washington's pledge of extended deterrence to South Korea by leveraging the full spectrum of U.S. military capabilities, including its nuclear forces. The two sides agreed that enhanced nuclear deterrence exercises are helping improve the allies' decision-making coordination in potential nuclear contingencies. The Nuclear Consultative Group was launched in 2023 following the Washington Declaration, reaffirming the country's commitment to nuclear non-proliferation and the peaceful use of nuclear energy. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
The search for two missing workers following a collapse at a construction site in the southern city of Gwangju on Thursday afternoon has been halted owing to safety concerns. Our Oh Soo-young has the latest.
Fire authorities in Gwangju stopped all search operations from 9:20 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Friday, citing dangerously unstable steel beams at the site of the new Gwangju Metropolitan Library. The framework, which was twisted, severed and weighed down by concrete, poses a high risk of secondary collapse, forcing rescue crews to step back until it has stabilized. The National Fire Agency held an emergency assessment with related agencies this morning and concluded that no search can proceed without full safety secured. Structural removal and rescue will move together only once conditions allow. Before the suspension, overnight operations continued, but with no trace of the 2 workers trapped, when a steel frame gave way as concrete was being poured. 4 workers were buried in Thursday's 2 p.m. collapse. 2 were recovered but later confirmed dead. Officials believe the initial failure on the rooftop triggered a chain reaction, causing the collapse. Experts point to faulty steel frame connections as a possible cause. Stabilization work is ongoing as debris is removed using heavy machinery, while thermal imaging cameras and other detection devices scan for signs of life. But as time passes and the concrete hardens, access is becoming increasingly difficult. President Lee Jae-myung has ordered relevant ministries to commit all available resources to the rescue.
행안부나 노동부나 등 관련 부처에서 인적 물적 자산을 최대한 동원해가지고 일단 구조에 총력을 다하기를 바랍니다.
The Labour Minister has been directed to travel to the site immediately, while senior safety officials cancelled scheduled briefings to join response operations. 오수영 아리랑 뉴스.
On a light note now, the National Museum of Korea has welcomed over 6 million visitors this year, its highest annual number since its founding. The milestone raises its cumulative visitor count past 100 million and positions the museum as the world's 4th most visited this year, following the Louvre, the Vatican Museums and the British Museum. The South Korean museum credits its immersive exhibition experiences and youth-focused programs, as well as the popularity of its merchandise, for its growing public appeal. Staying on the cultural front, an exhibition in the city of Chuncheon brings to meaningful light Buddhist artwork. Our An Sung-jin has a glimpse.
The journey of Buddha's enlightenment. A gentle resonance of a temple gong signals the beginning. There are 2 ritual water bottles from the unified Silla period, which were excavated in Samcheok. They symbolize the washing away of suffering with pure water. As visitors walk along, appreciating Buddhist ritual objects that purify the spirit, they are greeted by a Buddha who has attained enlightenment. This gilt bronze Buddha statue lay underground for over 1,000 years before being unearthed and now sits to meet the world. In front of the halo that represents sacred light, the Buddha's serene smile draws attention. It is a 9th century Buddha statue that was excavated in 2015 at the site of the Seonlimwon Temple in Yangyang, and it took 5 full years just to restore it. A video showing the fully restored form of the statue has been recreated using AI technology and is also being screened in the exhibition hall. And this gilt bronze seated Buddha statue, excavated from Mount Kumgang in 1930, displays a compassionate and mystical presence amid its splendor.
Bodhisattvas are guides for followers so that they don't give up and continue on their path. To feel the mystical power of such bodhisattvas, their magnificent appearance is essential, and this statue reflects that very well.
Symbolizing the final part of the enlightenment journey is a seated statue with Buddha's chest open and legs firmly crossed as it radiates unbroken tranquility. The hand gesture with the thumb and index finger touching represents the moment just before entering deep meditation, when the wisdom to see through all things is about to arise. It symbolizes the very fruition of enlightenment.
We hope that as you look at these works, you take time to reflect on the suffering you're facing in life and what must be realized. Ultimately, we hope you experience peace of mind, and emotional stability.
This special exhibition of Buddhist art that will take you on a journey to finding enlightenment opened at the Chuncheon National Museum on November 25th and will remain open until the end of 2028. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. In the United States on Thursday, Washington expanded sanctions on Venezuela, targeting 6 oil tankers, 6 shipping companies, and relatives of President Nicolas Maduro. The U.S. Treasury said the sanctioned vessels recently transported Venezuelan crude oil and accused them of deceptive shipping practices. The move follows the U.S. seizure of a sanctioned oil tanker off Venezuela's coast on Wednesday, the first such seizure since sanctions were imposed in 2019. U.S. officials say more tanker seizures are being planned. In Ukraine, President Vladimir Zelenskyy has said holding elections during wartime would require a ceasefire and firm security guarantees. Zelenskyy said on Thursday that voting would only be possible if fighting stopped for the duration of the election process, with security ensured by the United States and European partners. He was responding to renewed questions about elections, which have been suspended under martial law since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. Time magazine named the architects of AI as its 2025 Person of the Year on Thursday. Time said 2025 marked the year artificial intelligence moved from a niche technology into mainstream life. The cover highlights 8 people involved in designing and building AI systems, including executives from OpenAI, Google DeepMind, NVIDIA, Meta, Tesla, and AMD. Time said it chose the people behind the technology rather than AI itself for shaping global change this year. In the United States, a New York court on Thursday sentenced cryptocurrency entrepreneur Kwon to 15 years in prison. Kwon pleaded guilty to 2 fraud counts linked to the collapse of the Terra USD and Luna tokens, which saw investors lose more than $40 billion. He co-founded Terraform Labs, which filed for bankruptcy after Terra's failure in 2022. The judge said Kwon knowingly misled investors. Kwon said he accepted full responsibility. Chu Ji-han, Arirang News.
This morning, there was a sharp drop in temperatures around the country. In Seoul, the low plunged to minus 3.6 degrees Celsius, which is about 9 degrees colder than yesterday. Daytime highs will only top out at 3 degrees both tomorrow and Sunday, making for a cold weekend. In addition, rain and snow are forecast across much of the country tomorrow. Seoul could see up to 5 centimeters of snow. There will be heavy snow of up to 10 centimeters in the western parts of Gangwon-do province and the mountainous areas of Jeju Island. We'll avoid sub-zero cold tomorrow morning with Seoul and Gwangju at 2 degrees, Busan at 7 degrees. Daily highs will move up to only 3 degrees in Seoul, 5 degrees in Chuncheon. Most of the rain and snow will stop by tomorrow night, but another round of snow is expected again on Sunday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at the Star here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. And today we touch upon this year's news stories in pictures.